Today we're talking about making a dart or sewing a dart, and that is one method that we use to control fullness in a garment. And so what we mean by that is we are taking flat fabric and making it have shape. So this applies to woven fabric, not generally knit fabrics. So other ways we might control fullness or add shape to a garment is by sewing in pin tucks or pleats or gathers, or there's tons of different ways that we can control fullness. But today we're focusing on the dart. And so a dart is basically just a triangular fold sewn into the fabric. So here's an example on a dress, and generally darts point towards the fullest part of a curve. So it might be the bust, it might be the hips, it might be the shoulder, it might be the elbow, it could be a lot of different places. So this one's a bust dart on a dress, and so the outside looks just like a seam that kind of stops pointing towards the bust, and then on the inside you can see that it is a triangle stitched in to the fabric. There we go. So that's what the inside looks like. So it was a flat piece of fabric, and now we're adding shape by sewing this little triangle into it. So we backstitch here, we sew down to the point, we hand tie knots, because you really don't want to backstitch and draw any sort of attention to the very point. You want it to be as smooth a transition as possible. So we're going to work on sewing a dart example for our sample here. So you would take your pattern and you would use tracing wheel and tracing paper or chalk or however you want to mark it. So I've marked this here with chalk, and you want to make sure you have the full dart. There's usually dots to help you match, and then you want to mark where the point is. I generally draw a little slash at the end to make it easier to see where the dart ends. So you're going to start by folding your dart in half like this. And I like to take a pin and poke down into one of my dots and make sure it's coming out exactly on the other side. And it's not, so that means I need to wiggle this side over until it matches. And that looks pretty good. So then I pin it perpendicular to what I'm going to be sewing right here. And I do the same thing down here. Take a pin, poke it through, see if it matches. Ooh, that one was pretty dead on. So your markings would be on the inside of your garment, and then you're stitching this, and then this becomes the outside. So then I would put at least one more pin, maybe two. One down at the point to tell me where to stop. Maybe one more in between. Just poke one on the seam and make sure it's lined up. That way it doesn't twist. Alright, so once you've got that done, you're going to take it to the sewing machine, and you're going to backstitch at the wide end and then sew to the very, very, very edge of the fabric. You want to take 2 or 3 stitches on the very, very, very edge. I'm saying that over and over again because it's really important that you get that sewn as close to the edge as possible, because otherwise you're going to have a pucker. Alright, you're going to backstitch the top at the Y end, and follow your line. Take your pins out as you go, or sew over them if you want to. So I'm going to slow down at the end because I want to have a lot of control over the last couple of stitches. So I'm actually going to stop and hand crank the last few stitches so that I can make sure that I sew all the way to the very, very, very fold of the fabric, like threads from the very edge. There we go. So I'm done with the pins. I'm going to leave my threads a little long so I can hand tie knots, so you don't have back stitching at the end that can cause some puckers. So just like you're tying the first step of tying your shoe. Do maybe 3 of those, and then you can cut it shorter Maybe like 3/8 of an inch or so. And then trim this end all the way to the fabric. And that's it for the sewing part, and now I'm going to show you how to press it. So technically, you want to use a pressing ham or something to press the dart. That way it can have a curve like it's supposed to. So we're taking this flat piece of fabric, we sew the triangle into it, and now we're pressing it over something curved because we're mimicking the curves of the body so that we can press it neatly. So you technically want to press with the grain of the fabric. Of course, it's not always easy to do that in some cases, but we're going to press it as tightly as we can to our stitches. The wide end to the point. Our goal is to smooth out the point so that there's no visible pucker. And if you've stitched accurately, really close to the very edge, you should have no pucker. But if you stitch even just like a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge, you're gonna have a little pucker there. So that's pretty decent. So now my flat piece of fabric has a little bit of curve to it. And we're done.